never thought I'd become a parent, and certainly not like this. When the court handed me custody of my sister's son, Daniel, I told myself I could handle it. After all, how hard could it be to take care of a 7-year-old boy? Feed him, clothe him, make sure he goes to school. Simple responsibilities. But I didn't account for the silence that followed me home. The strange weight that clung to him like a shadow I couldn't see, but could feel, pressing against my chest every time he entered the room. Daniel wasn't like other kids. That was obvious from the start. He rarely laughed, rarely cried. He watched. He watched with those wide, steady eyes that seemed too old for his face. The first night, while unpacking his small bag of clothes, I found his notebooks. Not coloring books, not sketch pads filled with superheroes. Notebooks filled with shaky handwriting, words, sentences, questions, things a child his age shouldn't even know how to phrase. Why does the man in the corner only come at night? One page read. Another. If I don't close my eyes, he doesn't move. I wanted to believe it was imagination. Kids have invisible friends, right? But the handwriting was cramped, desperate, and he'd filled 3 separate notebooks with the same kinds of thoughts. That first evening, while I made him dinner, I heard him humming softly from the living room. The tune stopped the second I stepped closer. When I asked him what he was singing, he tilted his head. "You used to sing it to me," he said quietly. My blood ran cold. I never sang to him. I wasn't even around much when my sister was alive, but he spoke with certainty, his gaze locked on me, waiting for my denial. I laughed it off, told him maybe he dreamed it. But later, when I lay in bed, I couldn't shake the rhythm of that half-hummed melody. It felt familiar, though I couldn't place why. By the second day, I noticed his habits. The way he'd stop in doorways, standing perfectly still, as if waiting for permission to enter. The way he whispered to the corners of rooms, his lips barely moving. And the way he'd occasionally mutter things under his breath, words that didn't sound like English. Words that didn't sound like anything I should recognize. I told myself I was just adjusting. That grief and responsibility were making me paranoid. But then he said something I couldn't ignore. We were sitting at breakfast, the quiet broken only by the scrape of his spoon against the bowl. Out of nowhere, he said, "Mom told me you'd come. She said you'd take care of me when she was gone." I froze. My sister never had the chance to say goodbye. The accident was sudden, brutal. She couldn't have told him that. Before I could ask, Daniel looked up. His eyes weren't sad or frightened. They were calm, certain, almost relieved. That night, I dreamed of my sister standing in the kitchen, whispering warnings I couldn't quite hear. And when I woke, Daniel was at my bedside, staring down at me. "You're not supposed to ignore the notes," he said. My mouth went dry. "What notes?" He didn't answer. He just walked away, humming that same broken tune. And when I got up, I found something taped to the fridge. Paper yellowed, edges torn, my sister's handwriting scratched across the page. "Follow the rules, or he'll notice." The custody hearing felt more like a funeral than a courtroom proceeding. Everyone spoke in low voices, as if afraid to disturb something lingering in the air. My sister's lawyer pushed the papers toward me, her hands trembling slightly, as though she couldn't wait to be rid of them. Daniel sat beside me, legs too short to touch the floor, swinging in silence. He didn't look at me. He didn't look at anyone. His eyes stayed fixed on a corner of the room, blank but unwavering, as though someone invisible stood there, staring back. When the judge signed the final document, I expected to feel relief. Instead, I felt the weight of chains. Daniel was mine now, not by choice, but by blood. Afterward, the lawyer handed me a thin, worn envelope. "Your sister left this for you," she whispered. She didn't meet my eyes, said you'd understand. I wanted to ask what she meant, but she turned and hurried away before I could. The envelope sat heavy in my pocket the entire drive home. Daniel didn't speak once. The only sound was the occasional squeak of the back seat as he shifted. Every time I glanced in the rearview mirror, his reflection seemed delayed. His face lagged, half a second behind his actual movement. I told myself I was overtired, that grief was playing tricks on me. When we arrived, Daniel walked into my house like he'd been there before. He knew where the bathroom was. He knew which cupboard held the plates. I hadn't shown him any of it. That night, after putting him to bed, I finally opened the envelope. Inside was a folded sheet of paper, yellowed and brittle at the edges. My sister's handwriting scrawled across it, jagged and urgent. At the top, in thick ink, rules for watching Daniel there were 7. Each one is stranger than the last. 1. Never let him near a mirror after sunset. If he asks why, tell him it's for his safety. Never let him see his own reflection in the dark. 2. If Daniel hums the song, do not join in, no matter how much you recognize it. Do not complete the melody. 3. Always lock his bedroom door at exactly 9:13 p.m., not before, not after. He will not resist. He knows why. 4. If he calls your name during the night, do not answer. Check his room only after the sun has risen. 5. Do not allow him to write after midnight. If he insists, take the paper away without reading it. Burn it outside the house. 6. Should Daniel begin speaking in a voice that isn't his, leave the room immediately. Do not engage. Do not acknowledge. Wait until it stops. 7. Above all, never, under any circumstance, tell him what you dream about. My hands shook as I read the list. It was ridiculous, terrifying, but ridiculous. I wanted to laugh, to crumple the paper and throw it away. But the memory of Daniel at my bedside, whispering about notes, held me still. The air in the room felt colder. I read the list again and again. Each time, the words seemed less like superstition and more like instructions, urgent, desperate instructions from someone who knew. I told myself I wouldn't believe it, that I'd raise Daniel like any other child. But when I glanced down the hallway toward his bedroom door, a chill ran over me. The house felt different now, as though by opening that envelope, I'd invited something in. Before bed, I double-checked his door, locked, exactly as the note said. I lingered there, listening. Daniel's breathing on the other side was steady, slow, normal. Still, I caught myself whispering an apology to no one before retreating to my room. Sleep came in fragments. Every creak of the house pulled me back awake. At some point, I heard the faint scrape of paper, the scratch of a pen. It was coming from Daniel's room. My heart pounded. I checked the clock. 12:04 a.m. Rule 5. I forced myself not to move, not to check. My hand hovered over the doorknob, sweat slicking my palm. Then, slowly, the sound stopped. A moment later, I heard a faint tearing noise, like paper being crumpled, followed by soft humming. That tune again. I pressed my forehead against the wall and shut my eyes. I thought about the rules, about the certainty in my sister's handwriting, and for the first time, I understood these weren't suggestions. They were lifelines. Morning came like a reprieve. Sunlight spilling through the curtains felt unnatural, too warm, too bright after the night I'd endured. Daniel sat at the table, eating cereal like nothing had happened. No sign of paper, no pen in sight. He looked up at me with those calm, ancient eyes and said, "You read the rules, didn't you?" My throat tightened. I nodded before I could stop myself. Daniel smiled faintly, not a child's smile. Something older, something satisfied. "Good," he whispered. "Then maybe you'll last longer than the others." I told myself the rules were nonsense. Strange coping rituals my sister had invented, maybe to calm Daniel, maybe to keep her own fears under control. But the words lingered, twisting in my mind every time I looked at him. They were too specific to ignore, too heavy to dismiss. Still, I tried to live normally. I cooked him breakfast, helped him with homework, drove him to school. On the surface, he was just a quiet boy who'd suffered too much loss too young. But every so often, something slipped through, something that reminded me he wasn't normal at all. The first violation wasn't intentional. I didn't even realize it had happened until it was too late. It was a Thursday evening. The sun had gone down quicker than I expected. The house dipped into shadows before I could flick on the lamps. Daniel was brushing his teeth in the bathroom, the door half open. I walked past, thinking nothing of it. Then I heard him pause, the bristles falling silent. I glanced in. He was staring into the mirror. The bathroom light was dim, flickering faintly, and his reflection lagged. It didn't match him. He tilted his head slightly to the right, and the reflection followed a second later, sharper, more deliberate, like it was thinking about whether or not it wanted to mimic him. My throat closed up. Rule 1. Never let him near a mirror after sunset. I should have stopped it immediately, but I froze. The boy in the glass wasn't Daniel, not exactly. His eyes were too dark, too deep, almost black pits. His smile spread slowly, stretching wider than Daniel's real mouth ever could. Then, in the mirror, his lips moved. A whisper pressed against my ears, though Daniel's real mouth didn't move at all. "You're not her," it said. The sound was thin, papery, like dead leaves dragging across the floor. My knees almost buckled. I lunged forward, grabbing Daniel by the shoulders and yanking him away. He blinked up at me, toothbrush hanging from his mouth, confused, innocent. "What are you doing?" he mumbled, foam spilling down his chin. I slammed the bathroom door shut, heart hammering, breath caught in my throat. I couldn't look at the mirror again. I couldn't. That night, I locked his door precisely at 9:13, as the rules demanded. I whispered to myself that it was fine now, that nothing had followed us. But sleep didn't come easy. At 2 a.m., I woke to a sound, soft humming, carried through the air vents. That same tune, Daniel's tune. I buried my head in the pillow, covering my ears, refusing to listen. Then came something worse, a voice, thin, mocking from the hallway outside my door. "You're not her," it repeated. "You don't belong here." I couldn't breathe. I wanted to scream, but my throat closed tight, like the sound would draw it closer. The rules. Rule 4. If he calls your name during the night, do not answer. But this wasn't Daniel's voice. It was the voice from the mirror. The voice that shouldn't exist at all. It dragged my name out, syllable by syllable, stretching it until it cracked like brittle glass. The doorknob rattled once, then silence. I lay awake until dawn, sweat cold against my skin. When morning light finally seeped through the curtains, I dared to open my door. The hallway was empty, nothing disturbed, no sign of anyone standing there. Except on the floor outside my door, someone had pressed their finger into the dust along the baseboard. Letters scrawled in jagged lines, not her. Daniel sat at the breakfast table like always, spooning cereal into his mouth. His expression was blank, his eyes heavy with sleep. But when he looked at me, I saw it. A flicker of awareness, a glint of knowledge far too sharp for his age. "You saw him?" he said softly. Not a question. A statement. My stomach turned. I couldn't answer. Daniel returned his gaze to the cereal. He chewed slowly, deliberately. "He doesn't like mistakes," he added. I spent the entire day replaying the mirror incident in my head, telling myself I had imagined it, but the words scrawled in dust outside my bedroom door were too sharp, too deliberate. Not imagination, not a trick of tired eyes. By the next evening, I was exhausted. My body begged for sleep, but my mind wouldn't let me close my eyes. Daniel was quiet as always, sitting cross-legged on the living room floor, flipping through one of his notebooks. Every so often he'd pause, tilting his head as if listening to someone I couldn't hear. I tried to keep the rules at the front of my mind. Mirrors humming, the locked door, midnight writing. They were ridiculous, but I couldn't deny the truth anymore. Something was attached to him, something that followed rules of its own. It was after dinner when the second violation happened. Daniel was stacking blocks in the living room, humming softly to himself. The sound slipped into my ears like smoke, curling and familiar. I didn't realize at first that my lips had begun to move with it. The melody stirred something deep in my memory, something half forgotten. I found myself filling in the missing notes, matching his quiet tune with my own. The instant the last hum left my throat, Daniel froze. His hand stopped mid-air. The blocks toppled, clattering against the carpet. Slowly, he turned toward me. His expression was blank, but his eyes burned with something sharp, something alive. "You shouldn't have done that," he whispered. The lights flickered. The air shifted. I felt it before. I heard it, something pressing into the room, thick and invisible, like the weight of a storm just before lightning strikes. The shadows lengthened. I swear I saw them moving, pulling toward the corners of the room where Daniel's gaze often lingered. The hum began again, but it wasn't Daniel making it this time. It was low, stretched, reverberating from the walls themselves. My chest tightened. I stood, forcing my voice steady. "Daniel, it's fine. It's just a song." But he shook his head violently, eyes wide now. Real fear flashing for the first time. Double quotes, "No. It isn't a song." Then came the sound, something scratching inside the walls, crawling, dragging long nails against the wooden frame of the house. I staggered back, heart hammering, scanning the room for the source. Daniel clapped his hands over his ears. "Don't listen. Don't listen to him." I pressed my palms against my skull, shutting my eyes tight, but the humming grew louder, splitting into 2, then 3 tones, harmonizing in a way that made my bones ache. It stopped as suddenly as it started. Silence. When I opened my eyes, Daniel was trembling. He didn't look at me. His gaze was fixed on the dark corner near the ceiling, unblinking. "He knows now," Daniel whispered. I followed his eyes, but saw nothing. Nothing but shadow. Still, the air felt charged, heavy with something watching. That night, I locked his door at 9:13 sharp. My hand shook as I twisted the key, a clock ticking loud in my ears. Though the house was quiet, sleep barely touched me. At some point after midnight, I woke to the sound of writing again, the scratch of a pen against paper, steady, insistent. I wanted to rush in, to stop him, to burn the pages, like the rules demanded, but fear pinned me down. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, until the sound finally faded. At breakfast, Daniel looked pale, drained. He pushed his food around with the spoon, refusing to eat. When I asked if he was okay, he only said, "You shouldn't have answered the song. He'll come closer now." He didn't hum again that morning. He didn't need to. The silence was worse. I couldn't keep pretending anymore. The rules weren't just my sister's paranoia. They were warnings. Carefully drawn boundaries, meant to keep something out or, maybe, to keep something in. After the mirror and the song, I needed answers. For days, I watched Daniel more closely, studying his movements, his silences. He still whispered to corners, still froze at odd hours, as though listening for instructions. He never resisted the rules. In fact, he seemed relieved when I followed them, which begged the question, how long had my sister been living like this? How long had she been surviving by clinging to a list of impossible orders? I began searching her old belongings. Boxers from her apartment filled my garage stacked high, taped shut, smelling faintly of dust and mildew. Late one night, while Daniel slept behind his locked door, I tore through them. At first it was the usual, clothes, photo albums, unpaid bills. Then I found a shoebox, sealed with duct tape, shoved into the bottom of a crate. Inside were journals. Not the kind you write teenage crushes in, but thick, heavy books. Each one filled edge to edge with frantic handwriting. The first entry was dated 3 years ago. He hums the song again. It isn't his song. He wasn't even born when I heard it the first time. But he knows every note. I can't let him finish it. Not ever. My hands shook as I turned the pages. Entry after entry, my sister documented the rules. Not as guidelines, but as survival tactics. She detailed every incident, small violations, near misses, encounters with the thing that lived just out of sight. One passage stuck with me. The reflection is his window. If Daniel looks too long, he notices me instead. Last week, the glass smiled before Daniel did. I had to drag him away. I think he liked it. Another entry. He called my name at 2:30 a.m. I almost answered. The voice was so close to his, but something in it like two tones, speaking at once. I stayed quiet. In the morning, Daniel said, I'd passed the test. Who is teaching him these things? The more I read, the colder I felt. It wasn't just Daniel being strange. Something used him. Something played through him like a broken instrument. Halfway through the second journal, I found sketches. Shaky drawings of a figure in the corners of rooms, stretched tall, its head tilted unnaturally, its arms bending the wrong way. Always drawn in shadows, never in light. She labeled it only once, The Watcher. I turned page after page, feeling sicker with each one. My sister had been documenting a haunting, maybe even a possession, and no one believed her. She had survived it alone until her death, and now it was mine. In the back of one notebook, I found a folded sheet of paper, different handwriting, cramped, all capitals. You cannot break them, not even once. He is patient. He is kind to children. He is cruel to guardians. The song is how he enters. The mirror is how he feeds. The dreams are how he stays. No signature, no explanation, just those words. I shoved the journals back in the box, but I couldn't leave them there. I needed them close, like a shield. I carried the first volume into my bedroom, sliding it under the mattress. That night, I dreamt of my sister again. She stood at the foot of my bed, her face half shrouded in shadow. Her lips moved, forming words I couldn't hear, but I knew what she was saying. The rules. She was repeating the rules. When I jolted awake, Daniel was standing in the doorway. His eyes glowed faintly in the dim light of the hallway. You shouldn't read them, he said softly. My throat tightened. Read what? The journals. He stepped inside, barefoot. His small frame hunched like the weight of years bent his spine. They make him angry, he whispered. He doesn't like it when you remember. I wanted to demand answers, but my tongue felt swollen, thick, useless. Daniel tilted his head, just as he did when staring at corners. Then he turned and walked away, vanishing back into the dark hall. The next morning, I checked the shoebox again. One of the journals was missing. I confronted Daniel, but he only shrugged. He wanted it, he said. I searched the house top to bottom. Nothing. The book was gone. That evening, desperate, I returned to the box. At the very bottom, taped beneath the cardboard, I found something else. A small cassette recorder. A tape was inside, labeled in my sister's frantic handwriting. Do not play when he is near. I waited until Daniel was asleep, his door locked tight. Then I pressed play. Static first. Then my sister's voice, shaky, exhausted. If you're hearing this, it means he's still here. I tried, but I couldn't stop him. Daniel doesn't belong to me anymore. He hasn't for a long time. The rules are the only thing keeping him tethered to us, instead of to it. Don't let him sing. Don't let him write. And whatever you do, don't tell him your dreams. Dreams are the door. He remembers through them. The tape clicked off. Silence. I sat there shaking, the recorder heavy in my hand. For the first time, I believed it fully. The rules weren't superstition. They were my sister's last defense, and now they were mine. From down the hall, faint and muffled through the door, I heard it again. The humming. The same broken tune. Louder this time. Steadier. As if someone else was humming with him. I couldn't keep calm anymore. The journals. The tape. Daniel's strange certainty they had stripped away every excuse I'd been clinging to. Something lived with us. Something patient. Clever. And very, very close. That night, after listening to the tape, I sat awake with every light on, the shoebox of journals stacked beside me like a barricade. My heart jumped at every creak of the house, every shifting shadow across the walls at 12:17. The power went out. The lights cut to black so abruptly that my breath caught in my throat. The hum of the refrigerator died. The silence pressed in, heavier than any darkness I'd ever known. Then I heard it. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate, heading down the hallway toward my room. I snatched the flashlight from the nightstand and flicked it on. The beam cut across the floorboards, pale and narrow. The footsteps stopped. "Daniel," I whispered, my voice trembling. No answer. I crept to the door, pressing my ear against it. The air on the other side felt charged, almost buzzing. Then came the knock. Soft, patient, 3 steady raps. The rules screamed in my head. Don't answer. Don't engage. I held my breath, but the knocking returned harder this time, shaking the wood in its frame. "Let me in," a voice hissed, thin, high. Not Daniel's. It was the same voice from the mirror. My legs buckled. I staggered back, flashlight shaking wildly across the room. The voice grew louder, closer, filling the space as if seeping through the walls themselves. "You can't keep him from me. He's mine. He always was." I dropped to my knees, clutching the journals, like they might shield me. My sister's handwriting blurred as tears filled my eyes. Then came the sound that froze the blood in my veins. The scrape of metal turning inside the lock. I lunged, bracing the door with my shoulder, just as the knob twisted violently. The wood shuddered. The hinges groaned. Whatever was outside wasn't knocking anymore. It was pushing through the thin gap at the bottom of the door. A shadow spilled inward, long fingers stretching across the floor, writhing like smoke. The flashlight flickered, died. I screamed, shoving harder against the door as the frame buckled under pressure. The voice whispered right at my ear now, though no one was inside. Not her, not her, not her. I couldn't hold it much longer. Desperation surged through me. I groped for anything, my hand landing on the cassette recorder. With shaking fingers, I slammed the play button. Static burst into the room, followed by my sister's voice. "He remembers through dreams. Don't let him sing. Don't let him write." The shadows recoiled, jerking back from the door like smoke meeting flame. The pressure against the wood vanished. Silence returned. I slumped to the floor, gasping, the recorder hissing softly beside me. For a long time, I didn't move. I couldn't. My body shook too violently, my heart pounding out of rhythm. Finally, I forced myself up. The hallway outside was empty. The air smelled faintly of burnt wood, though nothing was scorched. I rushed to Daniel's room. His door was still locked. My hands trembled so badly I nearly dropped the key. But when I pushed the door open, he was there, sitting upright in bed, awake. He looked at me with calm, unblinking eyes. "You shouldn't have played it," he said. My voice cracked. "It saved me." He shook his head. No, it made him curious. Before I could respond, a loud crack echoed from somewhere deeper in the house. The sound of splintering wood, like something breaking through the foundation. The floor trembled beneath my feet. Daniel slid off the bed, walking toward the corner of the room. He stared into the shadows, tilting his head, listening. "What is it?" I whispered. His small shoulders rose and fell. "He's inside now." The air grew heavy again, pressing down until every breath scraped my throat raw. The shadows along the walls stretched unnaturally, pooling into the room, bending upward until they almost touched the ceiling. And then I saw it. The figure, Tall, thin, bent at the neck. Head lolling sideways, as though too heavy for its body. Arms stretched, fingers long enough to scrape the floor. Its face, God. Its face was a blur, a smear of shifting features, never staying the same. One moment it looked like my sister, the next, like me, then like no one at all. It moved without sound, gliding forward until it loomed behind Daniel. I staggered back, choking on air. Get away from him. Daniel didn't flinch. He turned to me, his expression eerily calm. He doesn't want me, he said softly. He wants you. The figure tilted its head further, grotesquely sideways, until I thought its neck might snap. Its faceless blur stretched into something like a smile. The journals fell from my hands. I grabbed Daniel, pulling him toward me, but the figure surged closer, shadows bending, walls groaning, the room twisted, warping, as though the house itself bent around its presence. I shoved Daniel into the hallway, slamming his door behind us. The impact rattled the frame, plaster dust falling from the ceiling. We ran down the stairs, through the dark, the air thick with whispers. Voices layered, dozens of them, all chanting the same thing. Not her. Not her. Not her. We reached the front door. I fumbled with the lock, but the wood swelled under my grip, the knob twisting uselessly. The house wouldn't let us out. Daniel clutched my arm, his small voice urgent. The rules. You have to follow the rules. What rule? I screamed, panic overtaking me. His eyes flicked toward me, impossibly steady in the chaos. Don't tell him your dreams. The chanting voices fell silent all at once. A hush deeper than silence spread through the house, and then the figure spoke. Not from the shadows, not from outside the door, but from inside my own head. Tell me. The words vibrated through my skull, a command, irresistible. My knees buckled. Images of my sister filled my mind, her standing at my bedside in dreams, whispering warnings. I clamped my mouth shut, biting hard until blood filled my tongue. Daniel shook me violently. Don't give it to him. The figure loomed closer, stretching thin across the room. Its faceless blur pressing toward mine on then light. The power snapped back on. Every bulb in the house blazed white, burning away the shadows. The figure recoiled, retreating so fast it blurred, vanishing into the corners like smoke dragged out a window. The silence left behind was suffocating. Daniel collapsed to the floor, exhausted. I sank beside him, trembling, unable to speak. For the first time, I realized this wasn't survival. This was war, and I wasn't sure which of us the rules were truly meant to protect. When the lights finally steadied, I thought the worst was over, but the silence that followed was heavier than the terror that came before. It was the silence of unfinished business. Daniel leaned against me, pale but strangely calm. I brushed his hair back, whispering, "It's gone. You're safe now." He shook his head. "Not gone. He's waiting." The words twisted in my stomach. I wanted to reassure him, to tell him it wasn't true. But then I saw the journals, scattered across the floor. Opened 2 pages I hadn't read yet. My sister's handwriting sharper now, more frantic filled every margin. I crawled toward them, flipping through, each page darker than the last. The rules weren't just guidelines. They were bargains. Deals struck between her and the thing. I froze on a line scrawled in bold. Angry strokes. He doesn't take the child if he has me instead. My throat tightened. The room swayed. Daniel touched my arm. "What does it say?" I closed the journal, pressing it to my chest. Nothing. Just warnings. But the truth rattled inside me. My sister hadn't been protecting her son. She'd been feeding herself to the thing, to keep him untouched. Every rule I'd been following wasn't designed for Daniel's safety, was designed to prolong hers, and now she was gone. The cassette recorder still lay on the floor. I pressed play again, desperate to hear her voice one more time. even if only to make sense of the betrayal. The tape hissed, then clicked. Her voice filled the room, trembling but clear. "If you're hearing this, it means I couldn't hold him off. You think I made the rules for the boy, but I didn't. I made them for me. He wanted me. He promised, if I obeyed, he'd let my son live. And he did. For a while." The sound of her crying bled through the static. "But it's not enough. He wants more now. He always wants more. If you're raising him, if you've taken my place, then the rules are yours. Keep them, or he'll take everything. And don't blame me. I did what I had to. I had no choice." The tape ended with a sharp click. I sat frozen, bile rising in my throat. Betrayal doesn't always come as a knife. Sometimes it comes as a whisper that rewrites every memory you thought was safe. Daniel looked at me with solemn eyes far too old for his face. She gave herself to him. I swallowed hard. She made a deal. His expression didn't change. And now he wants you. The floor seemed to fall away beneath me. My sister hadn't died to protect her son. She'd bartered her life to delay the inevitable. I was never supposed to keep Daniel safe. I was supposed to replace her. The walls groaned softly, as if the house itself acknowledged the truth. Daniel crawled into my lap, clinging to me with arms that trembled despite his steady face. "Don't leave me," he whispered. The words cut deeper than the tape ever could. He had known, on some level. Children always know more than they say. My sister hadn't fooled him. Not really. I pressed my forehead to his hair, heart hammering. "I won't. I promise." But promises mean little when made in a house that listens. A sudden knock echoed from the front door. Not the frantic pounding from before. This was softer, deliberate, almost polite. Daniel stiffened. The knock came again, then a voice. My sister's voice. "Open the door. It's me." The journal slipped from my grasp. My body went cold. Her voice was clear, unbroken, warm, as if she were alive again, standing just feet away. "Please," it begged. I came back. "For both of you." Tears stung my eyes. For a flicker of a moment, I wanted to believe it. I wanted to believe she had escaped whatever bargain she struck, and had returned to fix things. But Daniel's grip on my arm tightened like a vice. His whisper was sharp, certain. "That's not her. That's him." The voice outside grew sweeter, almost pleading. "Don't you want to see me? Don't you want to ask me why I left? You don't have to wonder anymore. Just let me in." The words sank hooks into my chest, because I did want answers. I wanted to scream at her for leaving me with this burden, for hiding the truth, for making me the next piece on the board. But deep inside, I knew the cruelest truth of all. She hadn't hidden the rules to protect me. She'd written them to prepare me. The betrayal wasn't that she sacrificed herself. It was that she knew I'd be next, and she let it happen anyway. I staggered back from the door, pulling Daniel with me. The voice outside changed, warping, stretching, growing sharper with every word, until it wasn't my sister anymore. It was me. "Open the door," it whispered. "I'm already inside." I could feel the house breathing, a slow, patient inhale that seemed to gather strength from my fear. Daniel clung to me like we were both the same fragile thing, and for the first time since this began, the rules felt like shackles and lifelines at once. I had a choice: stay and obey blindly, hoping the bargain held, flee and risk dragging him into whatever followed us, or break a rule and gamble everything on an unpredictable outcome. My mind moved faster than my limbs. The voice at the door kept layering itself: my sister, me, something else, each iteration softer, more persuasive than the last. It promised comfort, explanations, the easy fix nobody deserved. I wanted to believe it, but the recorder's rasp and the journals. Ink had taught me to distrust easy answers. I thought of the line I'd read weeks ago: "He is kind to children. He is cruel to guardians." The sentence tasted like ash in my mouth. Daniel's small hand tightened around my sleeve. He looked at me with that old, tired stare and whispered, "If you leave, he will come. If you stay, he will learn to wait." I remembered something else, my sister's final entry, a single sentence scrawled in the margins. "If you are willing to lie, you can make him see the wrong thing." It had sounded like madness then. Now it sounded like a plan, ugly and necessary. Lie to a thing that fed on truth in dreams, feed it decoys and lead it elsewhere, so I chose the lie. I moved through the house with purpose. I gathered the journals, papers, anything that might hold my memories of her. I set them in a neat pile on the kitchen table and lit a candle I found in the drawer. The flame quivered, reflecting in the windows like a small defiant sun. I opened the front door wide, letting the night breathe in, and then I sat at the table with Daniel in my lap, the journals between us like a stack of offered sacrifices. "Tell me about your dreams," I said softly, forcing my voice to tremble like a confession. Daniel's eyes widened with horror. He knew I shouldn't. He shook his head, the motion small but fierce. "No," he whispered. "You can't tell him not to him," I interrupted. "To me, tell me now." The lie I had promised myself to perform would need fuel. If he could remember the dreams because someone once had, maybe I could give the thing a different memory to feast on something false, something that would drive it away, or at least buy us time. He looked at me as if assessing which version of me he had, sister's bargain or desperate guardian. Then, as if deciding, he began to speak, slow at first, then with a clarity that chilled me. He described a dream where we moved to a house by the sea, where waves masked the whispers and the horizon was a clean, indifferent line. He spoke of light that never dimmed and of people who held hands instead of hiding rules under mattresses as he spoke. I fed the recorder, the lie. I spoke beside him, narrating details that weren't mine. I told of lullabies we never sang, of baths we never shared, of a sister who'd run away and returned with eyes like a different season. My voice joined his in parts, weaving an alternate memory tangled with truth until neither of us could tell where one ended and the other began. Outside, the voice at the door softened, confused. It tried to shape itself around the new story, seeking the angles it needed to breach. For a wild, terrified minute, we held the narrative like a shield. The shadows near the windows shivered, as if hearing a song in a mangled key. Then the house shifted. The floor beneath my feet hummed in a low thrum that matched the rhythm of Daniel's voice. The thing wasn't fooled for long. It wanted a truth that would anchor it. But maybe it could be led by a stronger scent of desire, one that belonged to the living. Hungry for a different hunger. "Tell me the worst one," I coaxed, forcing my own memory into the story. "Tell me the dream that scared you the most." Daniel's chin trembled. He spoke a fragment, my sister standing at a crossroads, choosing the bargain while the child was carried away on her shoulders. In his version, she turned and smiled at him, and the smile was a trap. He spat the image out like poison. I nodded, encouraged him, let him say it again. Let the fiction build on itself. Back and forth we went, reshaping memory into bait. I could feel something outside, pressing, tugging at the edges of the house. It slowed, then recoiled, pulled by the gravity of a story that no longer matched the ache it wanted to feed on. For every honest terror we offered, I skewed the edges until the truth snapped into a new shape. It bought us time. Not a long time, but enough. When the voice outside finally changed, I knew we hadn't won. It sounded disappointed, distant, searching. The knocking stopped. The house exhaled. The shadows thinned. And in that narrowing quiet, Daniel's breaths evened out. We would need more than lies, next more than cleverness in taped confessions. We would need rules, and traps, and something that bound the thing less like a bargain and more like a chain. But for now, we had a thin, dangerous reprieve. I spent the next hours moving like someone trying to fix a clock with a hammer. I tore pages from a notebook, only the mentions of bargains, and fed them to the candle until the flame ate the ink. I tied twine in clumsy loops around door frames, spread salt in thin lines along windowsills, and set the recorder to loop the false narrative. Each ritual felt ridiculous and necessary when dawn came. Daniel played with a battered toy truck in the yard while I sat on the porch steps and watched him like a guard. I sat with the knowledge that I had my sister's work, but not her surrender. I decided then I would use the rules against him. I would twist them, repeat the lie, and shape defenses that bound rather than appeased. If the final rule, the one about dreams, had to be broken to save us, I would break it on my terms. I would not become an offering. I would fight with whatever I still had. Dawn changed nothing. In daylight the house looked harmless, but I knew better. We used the day to pretend. I photographed the journals, burned the originals in careful piles, salted thresholds, and left tiny offerings on the porch. Daniel watched, as if rehearsing normal life. At night, the hum returned, sharper each time. The recorder looped our false dreams, and sometimes muffled the sound. Other nights it taught the thing new seems to exploit. We slept in shifts. I caught him writing once and burned the page in the yard. He did not cry. Obedience had become a reflex. Weeks passed. Neighbors became whispers behind curtains. Social services called. I smiled and lied. The house changed with us. When the figure appeared, it borrowed faces, my sister's, mine, something blank, and learned each one like a lesson. Every lesson tightened its reach. One rainy morning, I found the metal box unlatched. The bolt had been sheared. The journals were gone. The recorder in my hand fuzzed. Under my voice, faint as breath, came a child's humming my son's tune. My stomach fell out of me. Daniel's room was empty, though his bed was made. On the sill lay a single page. My sister's handwriting above 3 small words in Daniel's script. I taught him. My hands went icy. A photograph fluttered from the envelope on the porch. Me asleep on the couch, eyes slack. On the back, in a hand I recognized well, my sister had written, "Good work." Panic made my legs run. I combed the house until my lungs burned. The hum threaded through the walls, now a conversation rather than a hunt. Rooms that had once felt like shields became windows. At the top of the stairs I stopped. From Daniel's room came a small, satisfied voice. Not in the house, but in my head. "You kept the rules." It was his voice, and not his voice. The sound of a child who had been taught how to act and how to betray. I opened the door. The room was empty, except for a scrap of paper on the pillow. In careful letters, I told him my dreams. The paper trembled in my hand like a confession. The recorder clicked, as if answering someone's touch. The original melody began clear, patient, harmonized by a child's hum that sounded almost content. I backed out and slammed the door. The house held its breath. The rules I had followed, the lies I had fed the thing, the candles and salt and offerings, all had been apprentices to a larger hunger. We had delayed it, redirected it, taught it decoys. In doing so, I had taught it to listen differently. A knock at the front door came, 3 taps. A voice, my sister's, warm, coaxing, called, "Open, it's me. We can fix this." I pressed my palm to the wood and whispered the only truth I had left. "He already knows my dreams." The response slid through the frame like smoke, cheerful and inevitable. "Then you were useful."